looks like I'm one of the guys.
You gotta make it happen, Captain. Am I right?
That's right.
Hazardous waste. You know, the mere mention of it strikes fear into some people. Not the airmen and civilians here at Mountain Home Air Force Base. Takes a little bit more than that to scare the likes of you, I would hope. My name is Travis Schwartz. I'm here today at the base, and today we are going to decipher the code of managing and disposing of hazardous waste. And to do that, we've got resident expert on all things hazardous waste, Kurt. Kurt, good to meet you.
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So I guess my first question to you, Kurt, is simply, what is a hazardous waste?
Hazardous waste is a product that is a solid gas or a liquid that's no longer considered usable for its intended purpose.
Okay. And what would be the characteristics of what a hazardous waste would be?
Well, there are 4 distinct characteristics that we utilize. One of them is ignitable. If the waste can be ignited, which means that it could be flashed into burning if it has a flash point of under 140 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
The next characteristic would be corrosivity, corrosive.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of self-explanatory. It's like a battery acid, something to that effect.
Right, something you don't want to drink, something you don't want to just like pour all over your body or onto your tongue.
Exactly.
Okay.
The actual definition of a corrosive is something that has a pH of less than 2 or greater than 12.5
Okay.
on the pH scale. The third characteristic would be reactive.
Okay.
Reactive products show they react violently with water, or they have they form an explosive mix with water. So they react, basically reactive.
And they react poorly. They're not nice. It's
Right.
like they aren't reasonable. They're gonna,
To explosion.
it's almost like saying overreact.
You know, the life of a husband is pretty reactive. Toxicity is the fourth characteristic.
Okay.
Toxicity are products that would have contain mainly a metal or a chemical that would cause it to be, of course, toxic.
Okay.
The labs that we send our samples to determine whether it's toxic do a test, which simulates a landfill condition.
Oh, okay.
And if the material exhibits a condition where it would actually leach into a landfill, then it fails what's called the T-clip, toxicity characteristic leaching procedure analysis. And then it could not be disposed of in a landfill. It would have to be disposed of in another method.
Oh, okay. So it's like something that if you were to throw into a landfill, it's basically telling you, since we can't look into the future and just sit around and wait 40 years to find out what that's going to do to the environment, it sort of speeds up that process in the lab to say, hey, this is going to leak toxic something into the land. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if it cannot be landfilled, then they have to use a different method to dispose of or neutralize the product.
Okay. So basically there's 4 things to look for when determining a hazardous waste. Is it ignitable? Is it corrosive? Is it reactive, like my wife? Is it and the toxicity level?
Correct.
Is that correct? Level? Toxicity level?
Characteristic. Toxicity characteristic.
I'm just making things up at this point. So let me ask you a question as far as when we're determining what might be a hazardous waste. I have a prop that I sort of set aside. I've got this rag and I've got some solvent on it because I'm going to be wiping down one of the planes, or I'm going to be wiping down a forklift, or just cleaning all of my tools. And now I've got this really filthy rag. It's got some solvent on it, but I'm not really sure if this is a hazardous waste or not. So do I just, since I'm not sure, just sort of wad it up, throw it in the garbage? Do I maybe throw a bunch of these in a pile and light them on fire and then run? Do I maybe just sort of shove it in somebody else's pocket? It's not my problem. What do I do with this rag at this point?
Well, you could do any of the 3, but none of the 3 would be legal.
Okay.
So let's start with the legal, how you would legally. Step 1 is always to call us first.
Okay.
Call me, the Hazardous Waste Program Manager, or the Central Collection Facility. Get assistance first. Talk to the people in the know.
Okay.
That's
so
step 1,
yeah,
always.
number 1, make the phone call.
Okay?
Okay.
And we would be asking you things like, do you expect to be continuously generating these kind of rags? You'd probably say, well, yeah, I have to clean my tools every week, or clean the plane every week or every day. We'd say, okay, we're going to ask you to acquire a UN approved drum.
Oh, okay.
Want to have a look behind you here?
Oh,
I'll
okay.
start showing you a few. This first container over here with
Okay.
the white label, it says container on hold pending analysis. We'll provide the label for you here, and you take this drum and the label goes onto this drum, and then you start collecting the rags.
Okay.
And you collect them and you collect them. There's no time limit on how long it takes to have to collect them, just until you get enough for a sample, which is usually about 3/4 full of the drum.
So say over the course of weeks or days or months, whatever it is.
However long it takes.
It gets about 3/4 full. At that point, now we're in a situation where we can send this, it looks like, to be analyzed.
Right. Then what'll happen is you'll call the CCF and say, I have this container with the pending analysis, and I think we have enough for a sample. So then the central collection facility will come down to your shop, and they'll, with a sample jar, and they'll obtain a sample out of it. Okay? So they'll take the sample and they'll send it to the lab. In the meantime, this drum still stays at the accumulation point with this sticker on it.
Right. So whether or not it's a hazardous waste or not, these are being collected somewhere until we find out.
Correct, and they'll be collected in this drum, and once we send the sample off and get the analytical back, then we'll know if it's going to become a hazardous waste
Okay. Yellow, hazardous.
or a non-hazardous waste.
Green, friendly, happy, non-hazardous, right?
Right, so these are the 3 drum labels you may see around base sitting at accumulation points, which we'll go visit a little later.
Okay.
So if the analysis comes back that it is hazardous, it'll be in a drum with this label, non-hazardous,
All right.
and this one is awaiting to be sampled.
Right, now that I know what to do with the rags, as far as, pending analysis, and once I know what the rag is, I know whether it's hazardous or not, where are the barrels kept? I mean, where do I go to dispose of these?
Okay, any shop that uses hazardous materials that could create a hazardous waste, or that could result in hazardous waste, has an area in the shop designated as the accumulation point.
Oh, okay.
And that accumulation point is managed by what's a trained person called an accumulation point manager,
All right. The
If you-
APM.
the APM.
All right.
If you'd like to go to the shop and have a look and meet an APM and have a look at their accumulation point, we can go do that right now.
I think that would probably be a very good idea.
Okay,
All right.
let's go.
That's where we're going. You stay here. We'll join you later. All right, Kurt, so I can see, as advertised by the sign here, we are now at an accumulation point.
That's correct. Travis, this is a typical shop hazardous waste accumulation point.
So tell me, how many accumulation points like this are there on base?
We have approximately 165 accumulation points and about 700 active waste streams.
Wow, so that's a lot of accumulation points, so there should be absolutely no excuse for not being able to find one if you think you have a hazardous waste on your hands.
That's correct.
All right. And who's in charge of sort of keeping this up and making sure that it's following all the regulations and everything it needs to be?
All the accumulation points have an assigned manager who manages the waste streams and the accumulation point.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, here's Mark.
In this
He's
case.
an accumulation point manager for this one.
Mark,
Nice to meet you.
hi, nice to meet you as well. So you are in charge of this particular accumulation point, I take it.
Yes, I am.
And could you tell me, are you the only one in charge of this? Or are there multiple accumulation point managers for any given station?
There's always multiple accumulation point managers. You always assign a primary and then at least one alternate. In many cases, in this case, multiple alternates.
Oh, okay. So there's a few different people
Yes.
that are responsible for this. And what are those responsibilities? What is an accumulation point manager? What are the main responsibilities of that person?
Well, some of the main responsibilities of accumulation point managers and the alternates are to brief the personnel that utilize this accumulation point and put the waste product in it. Other ones are properly labeling the barrels with, as you see, the hazardous waste and non-hazardous waste labels, accumulation point numbers and building numbers and so forth.
Okay. So keeping things properly labeled, making sure everything's lined up the way they're supposed to be. I'm also seeing some signage here, obviously to let us know that this is an accumulation point, but there's a lot of papers on there. Explain some of this to me, Mark.
Well, these are requirements, whether they may be federal requirements or base requirements, Air Force requirements. Things such as who the accumulation point managers are and the alternates, the secondary containment requirements, spill response procedures, maps of the accumulation point, where they're located, and no smoking, and so forth.
Okay. Another thing that I wanted to ask about, since we've got these big giant manuals sitting here, I thought it would be remiss of me not to ask, what are these manuals and what's in them?
Well, this first manual that you handed me is the weekly inspection checklist, basically. With anything, we have checks and balances with to ensure that in proper management, part of that is coming out weekly and making sure that the barrels are not to capacity, making sure that they're properly labeled, some of the names didn't get wiped off or numbers wiped off, make sure that the secondary containments are still there and not damaged, make sure the labels aren't rolling off and so forth. That's what this is for.
So
we
this whole like checklists cover all that sort of thing. And
yes, it goes step by step on we just go right down the checklist here, and then once we're done, we'll log it, and we keep a history of the logs that we've conducted the checklist.
Okay.
This manual is the Bible. This is the 100% of everything associated with the accumulation point.
The accumulation point Bible.
The accumulation point Bible.
The Bible.
Not the Bible. It has the appointment letters like we've seen on the board. It's got the locations and the maps. It's got the sign off from bioenvironmental, ground safety, fire protection, so forth. It's got all the training certificates for accumulation point managers. It's also got the profile sheets. You'll notice some are green for non-hazardous, some are red for hazardous waste. We get these from the environmental folks, and which tells us how to properly handle this waste.
All right. So it sounds like not only does the big book cover what you're supposed to be doing and how to do it, but who's responsible for this particular accumulation point.
That is correct.
All right. So, you know, another thing that strikes me is it sounds like the main responsibility, and correct me if I'm wrong, or a big responsibility of the accumulation point manager is to keep everybody else informed, make sure that everybody within the shop or your work area is doing things right. Is that?
Absolutely. Anytime a new personnel comes into the section, that's the first thing they need as far as waste handling goes. Is I need to take them, or an accumulation point manager needs to take them to the accumulation point, and they need to be properly trained.
Okay. And so if you know, folks walking, these folks out there, if you are in a new work area, if you're in a new shop or anything on the base, it's very important that you would get with your accumulation point manager, understand where the accumulation point is, and if you have any questions as to how to properly dispose of anything at all, that's the person to ask.
That is right.
All right. Well, I think that pretty well covers it. Mark, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It was good to meet you. Kurt, you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we covered everything here. Is there anything?
I think we got it. Looks like the containers are all sealed closed as they're sitting on secondary containment. They're all properly labeled, and everything looks good.
All right. This would be the secondary containment here.
That's correct. In the event of a leaky container, the secondary container holds the contents.
All right. So not only do we have our hazardous waste sealed properly, but if it were to spill out,
Leak.
we would catch that as well.
Right, correct.
All right. So I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today also is things like batteries and light bulbs, and maybe we could go to another work area and talk about that.
I think that sounds like a great idea. We'll go talk about universal waste.
Yeah. Let these guys get back to work. Okay. Let's do it. So obviously, you know, shops aren't the only place that people work, you know, out here at Mountain Home Air Force Base. I'd imagine in an administrative environment like this, you also have different waste, you know, problems. I thought I'd test. Go ahead and change the batteries on the camera, take a couple of shots along the way if you don't mind. What types of things might people be wasting in a setting like this?
Okay, that was a very good example of problems that we have in administrative offices with universal waste. These batteries that you just took out are universal waste.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
You can change them out of calculators or cameras or anything, any kind of battery. AA, AAA, C cell, D cell, you know, 9 volt, whatever.
So the garbage wasn't necessarily the best place for me to toss the batteries.
That's correct, and I'm going to show you what to do with them.
Oh, good.
If you look right over here behind you, I see you have a waste battery container already set up.
Somebody
labeled.
has one set up. I didn't even know it was there.
That's right, you're new here, so
Not guilty.
I'm teaching you. Okay, so what we do with these batteries is we tape both ends so they don't, you know.
Nothing gets out. So there's still the potential of some sort of a reaction if we don't tape these up properly.
And it's a Department of Transportation requirement that both ends be taped
Okay.
for shipment. Okay. Both ends. There's all the collected batteries. Now these labels come out of the Accumulation Point Manager Handbook that we saw down at the Accumulation Point that Mark pointed out for us. This is an appendix to that handbook. You just print out that page and you follow the instructions on the page.
Okay.
Writing in the dates. The date that the first battery goes in here is this date. You add 6 months and write that date in, and that's your turn-in date.
Oh, all right. So now we know how to properly dispose of a battery.
Yeah, this one here is for lithium
Not
batteries.
good for the host to break the rules like that, but
Lithium batteries require a ventilated lid,
okay.
but they're collected the same way, but you write lithium only on them.
And I would say, other than disposing batteries, I'm doing a pretty good job on making sure to do everything else right.
Well, it looks like you recently replaced a bulb in your light.
I did. Did it myself.
See one right here, as a matter of fact.
Step ladder, and sort of had a dark situation on my hands, so
Okay.
I put it over here. I didn't really know what to do with it. Thought I'd break it up in a bag later, throw it in the garbage. I don't know.
Okay. Let me tell you about bulbs.
Okay.
Bulbs are also universal waste, similar to batteries.
Oh,
I see here, this must be the box that you got it out of. It must have been the last one.
correct. Yeah.
Well,
just
that's
sort of-
perfect. Because this is the perfect container to collect your waste bulbs in now.
Oh, so this is also something that I shouldn't just be tossing in the garbage. This is okay.
That's
well,
correct.
It's good
So
to
we
know.
can slide
So
that bulb right in there.
I guess at this point I've broken 2 rules, but I'm just the
That's okay.
host. I'm not the expert.
We're teaching you.
Exactly.
Okay, now this is attachment 14
Right.
out of the Accumulation Point Manager's Handbook, which is the waste lamps label.
Okay.
So what we're going to do
Just attach
is
that to
we're
the
going
box
to
there.
attach that to the box.
Got it. Boom.
Okay.
And boom.
Now today's date is the 11th.
Okay.
Right? So we're going to write 6/11/10 in there, and then we're going to add 6 months to that, and that will be the
Okay.
turn-in date. And this is what you do when you put the first bulb or the first battery into either one of these containers, is you write in these dates.
Okay. So once we have a receptacle, we're going to start date, and this will be the date that we need to get a
And
turn
the
date.
turn-in date.
All right. And these are what you would refer to as universal waste.
Universal waste.
Okay.
Correct.
Typically found in an office environment. In what other types of environments would we typically find universal waste?
You know, down in the shops, we have trained personnel down there. Usually
Mhm.
that's the least problem area for universal waste. The most problem area that we usually find is with the admin offices, because they don't have a person trained in hazardous waste assigned to that office.
Okay.
So, you know, that creates a problem with people knowing that we have to collect the batteries and bulbs as universal waste. And what universal waste is it's hazardous waste, but the requirements have been relaxed by the EPA to promote the collection of them.
Okay.
Like you said, it would be easy to take it out in the dumpster and throw it in, but there's actually mercury in these bulbs, and we want to keep those out of the landfill,
Right.
which is why we collect these bulbs in these boxes, and when we get to the turn-in date, we either take it up to the CCF and turn it in, however many's in it,
Okay.
or we give them a call and have them pick it up.
All right. So that was sort of my next question, as far as, you know, once these are either full or the date is reached, we're gonna either call the CCF or we're just gonna run these up to the CCF ourselves.
That's right.
All
And at
right.
the end of this 6 months, even if you still only have the one bulb in there, you still have to turn it in because that's the accumulation time you're allowed.
All right.
Make sure you keep the box closed, so if it falls over, nothing can fall out. And I think with your batteries and your bulbs, I think you're all squared away.
Okay. So I suppose the next thing would be, maybe we should go take a look at this CCF, where everything ends up.
I think that's a great idea. Let's go over and I'll show you where these
All
get
right.
collected over there.
We'll set this aside. We don't need it for another 6 months.
And you want to set that in a
Until
place
full.
where it can't get knocked over or,
Right.
or bumped over.
We'll set it back here then.
Perfect.
Boom. All right. Let's
Okay,
head out.
let's
You
go
lead
to
the
the-
way. I've
Let's go to
never been to the
CCF.
CCF.
So Travis, come on over here and I'll show you where we collect our universal waste. Collect it all in this building right here.
All right. Everything comes to the shed.
Got the central collection facility. We
Okay.
have a collection of batteries, waste batteries.
Like a 5. That weighs 5,000 pounds.
As you
I
can
can
see,
lift
there's-
4,000, but
All types and all sizes in here, from
huh.
AA, AAA, C cell, D cell.
I don't know if you got that, but it says right on the battery not to just chuck it in the garbage like I was trying to do. So
Right.
maybe I should pay a little more attention. A lot of batteries. Got a lot of.
There's some more batteries here, for example, from a rechargeable drill and
Oh, yeah.
all
All
sorts
bagged
of
up
batteries.
and taped up and ready to be disposed of properly, I see.
That's right. Over here we have a collection of bulbs, waste bulbs.
So this is like as many fluorescent bulbs as I've ever seen in my entire life, right here.
Right. Now all these, the mercury in all these bulbs will end up in the proper place.
Okay. Now how long, here we're pretty full. There's quite a bit of stuff out here. How long has this been accumulating? I mean, how much, what does this represent? A year? 2 months?
This is about 2 weeks of collecting.
Wow, so just in 2 weeks,
Mhm.
this has been collected.
That's right.
Wow.
You can see how much has been diverted out of the landfill, saving the environment.
Yeah, doing it the right way. So this is obviously where universal waste ends up, and so the rest of the facility, we'll step back outside here, is where all the hazardous waste ends up eventually in this whole program. Is that correct?
That's correct. This facility here is for the collection of all the hazardous waste generated on base,
Okay.
where it's properly segregated and stored and prepared for shipment.
So all the different barrels that we've seen earlier all end up here, as well as the universal materials end up here. What are some of the repercussions? I mean, this seems like a really big program. It's well thought out. Things are being done right. Has it always been like that, or was there a time prior to these sort of things being put in place where this wasn't happening?
Well, actually, there's a reason for every law or regulation that we have, and in the case of hazardous waste, one of the things that initiated the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA, is the Love Canal, which was
Okay.
a big, long trench that was a guy had bought and dug up in New York. I think he was going to connect some body of water to another or something.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up going broke and so some companies that generate large amounts of hazardous waste started paying him to dispose of their hazardous waste, barrels and drums of chemicals, into that ditch.
Oh.
And then over the years, that ditch filled up, he backfilled in behind it, and then they built a housing division on top of it, not knowing, of course. And
So they've got like tons of barrels of hazardous waste like right underneath their foundation.
right, and so those chemicals started leaching up through the soil, and there started becoming record high numbers of leukemia, incidents of leukemia and respiratory diseases and things like that, skin diseases of the people who were living there, and they finally realized that it was because it was that subdivision or that area was built on top of a hazardous waste dump.
Right. So that is the product of not disposing of your hazardous waste
Exactly.
properly. And so obviously, everyone here on the base, that's a great story to hear, because why would you want to dispose of something improperly that could then leach into the groundwater or into the earth that you're walking on, or that sort of thing?
That's correct. Why would you
Okay.
want your kids to be playing in dirt that's contaminated with hazardous chemicals?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and because the program is in place and the processes are in place and they're very easy to follow, it looks like, as far as, if you don't know what to do, make that phone call, and then disposing of things in properly marked barrels. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do, so there's really no reason for you out there not to do your part. I guess the thing that we would want to leave everyone with is A, do your part, dispose of hazardous waste properly, ask questions, and make the phone call. If you have questions or if you think you might have hazardous waste, so to speak, on your hands, call the Hazardous Waste Program Manager.
Correct.
Or call the CFF.
The Central Collection Facility, correct.
Central Collection
CCF.
Facility, CCF. Well, thank you very much. I
You bet.
appreciate you showing me around today, and I appreciate you educating all of us on the right thing to do.
It was a pleasure.
All right, we're going to take off. So, for you taking notes at home, the 4 characteristics would be ignitable, corrosive, reactive, toxicity, right?
That's correct.
You nailed it. We're under attack. Our sound guy is under attack right now. I'm just gonna wait for him to go by, and then I'm gonna go grab my rag. Is that okay?
That's good.
We can use all this is usable material. And action.